For years, scientists have wondered whether the universe is silent or simply speaking in a language we've never understood. Now, for the first time, that question has an answer. The mysterious interstellar object known as 3I, Atlas, once dismissed as an ordinary visitor from another star system, has done something no one expected. It has spoken. And NASA has finally decoded its message. What they discovered is not speculation, not theory, but structured, verifiable information that points to one conclusion: this object is not just observing us, we are its mission. The breakthrough came after months of sleepless nights and thousands of hours of global collaboration. Teams from MIT, Caltech, the Max Planck Institute, and NASA's Deep Space Network worked together on what seemed impossible, transforming a series of 37 repeating radio pulses into something meaningful. At first, the data looked random, another cosmic burst, lost in the noise of deep space. But a closer look revealed patterns, too deliberate to be coincidence. The timing was perfect, the spacing precise. Every pulse was built around prime numbers and hydrogen frequencies, the universal constants of communication. Whoever, or whatever, sent this message wanted to be understood. Then came the revelation that silenced the room of scientists monitoring the data. The signal wasn't just mathematical. It contained references to Earth's own electromagnetic spectrum, as though it had been listening to us, first learning how we communicate, how we think, how we broadcast our presence into the void. And once it understood, it answered back. The structure of the message was elegant, almost impossibly so. It referenced physical constants, ratios tied to the age of our planet, even patterns linked to biological evolution. The more researchers decoded, the more one truth emerged. This wasn't a random artifact of nature. It was an engineered transmission built by intelligence, refined through purpose. It was designed to say, "We know you. We have been watching you for a very long time." NASA's official response has been careful, measured, and understated, but behind closed doors, the implications are staggering. This is not merely a first contact. It is the recognition that contact has already been made, and that we are part of something much larger. A catalog of civilizations monitored and studied across the stars. The idea that we are alone in the universe has collapsed overnight, replaced by a far more unsettling realization. We are not the ones observing anymore. We are the ones being observed. For now, scientists continue to analyze the message, but one thing is certain: 3I, Atlas, did not come here by accident. It came with intent. The decoded data suggests coordination, intelligence, and purpose. The signal was aimed at us, structured for us, and meant to be received at this precise stage in our development. And yet, the most haunting part isn't what the message said, it's what comes next. Because buried within the signal, encoded in mathematical constants and celestial coordinates, lies something no one expected: a date and location. A time 18 months from now. A point in space just beyond Earth's orbit. A rendezvous. The countdown has begun. The story of how the 3I, Atlas signal was finally decoded began not with discovery, but with frustration. For months, data streamed in from observatories around the world, precise, rhythmic bursts of radio energy arriving every 11 minutes. They defied every known pattern of natural origin. No pulsar behaved this way, no quasar followed such structure. The signal seemed designed to be recognized, yet impossible to translate. Until one scientist made a decision that changed everything: to stop treating it like a message and start treating it like a mathematical construct. At the Max Planck Institute for Radio Astronomy in Germany, a small team led by Dr. Erich Müller was the first to notice something unusual. Each pulse lasted exactly 2.1 seconds, a duration that, when measured against the hydrogen emission frequency at 1,420 MHz, equaled 3 billion hydrogen periods. Hydrogen, the most abundant element in the universe, is often called the universal constant of communication. Whoever encoded the signal knew that any civilization capable of radio astronomy would understand its significance. This was a deliberate bridge between species, math as language, physics as context. MIT's team, led by mathematician Dr. Elena Vasquez, took that idea further. Instead of looking for syntax or vocabulary, they searched for patterns that would make sense across any intelligent framework. They noticed the 37 pulses corresponded to prime numbers, specifically the 12th prime a clue, suggesting sequence, hierarchy, and intent. The repetition wasn't meaningless noise. It was counting. It was saying, we organize information as you do through mathematics. But the deeper they dug, the stranger it became. The spacing between the pulses, precisely 15.7 seconds, held its own hidden structure. When converted using the same hydrogen frequency reference, it produced ratios that reappeared throughout the signal, 7.5 to 1, a number that kept emerging in different layers of the data. It wasn't arbitrary, it meant something. When the numbers were analyzed through biological and geological timescales, an eerie correspondence appeared, 7.5 billion years, the approximate age of Earth when complex life began. Coincidence? Or a deliberate reference to our own evolutionary history? At Caltech, astrophysicist Dr. Michael Chen added another piece to the puzzle. By running the signal through wavelet transforms, he discovered subtle amplitude variations that formed a complex interference pattern. When mapped visually, it revealed an image not noise, but intention. The structure was unmistakable, a three-dimensional layout of nearby stars, each positioned within 5,000 light-years of Earth. At the center of the map was our Sunday. 12 points glowed brighter than the rest, 12 systems highlighted, 12 possible worlds, and we were one of them. It was now undeniable. 3i, Atlas wasn't broadcasting a random cosmic rhythm. It was sending a structured transmission with multiple layers, mathematical, visual, historical. A message designed for minds that think in patterns, not words. The teams realized they weren't just decoding a signal, they were unwrapping the logic of an intelligence that understood both the laws of physics and the story of life on Earth. As the pieces aligned, one truth became impossible to ignore. The 3i Atlas transmission wasn't a greeting, it was a record, an archive, a communication that spoke in the oldest universal language numbers and yet carried meaning far beyond science. Every constant, every ratio, every frequency pointed to one chilling conclusion. Whoever sent this signal knew us, our chemistry, our evolution, our planet's age. They've been studying us longer than we've been looking for them. And then, buried in the noise, researchers found something new. Something that didn't fit the pattern, a final modulation they hadn't seen before. It wasn't mathematical, it was temporal, a countdown. What it was counting down to, no one yet knew. The closer scientists looked at the 3i Atlas signal, the more it began to resemble a kind of universal grammar not made of words or symbols, but of logic itself. Every pulse, every interval, every frequency shift seemed to obey a higher pattern, one that spoke in the language of mathematics, the only true constant across intelligent life. It wasn't chaos, it was design. A message written not for one species, but for anyone capable of understanding numbers, physics, and the symmetry of nature. At first, it was the prime numbers that caught everyone's attention. 37 pulses, each separated by exact, repeating intervals all tied to the 12th prime. The signal was counting, cataloging, marking an order, but as decoding advanced, it became clear that these primes weren't just mathematical placeholders, they were identifiers. A way of saying this is sequence number 12. The 12th of what? That answer would come later, when the hidden image of 12 star systems was finally uncovered. But even before that, scientists could feel the meaning. It was methodical, deliberate, intelligent. Each pulse contained smaller structures inside it, oscillations, too subtle to detect at first glance. When measured in relation to the hydrogen line, these oscillations formed perfect ratios that repeated throughout the transmission. Hydrogen again chosen because it exists everywhere in the universe, serving as the cosmic clock. But here, it was being used to measure time and distance in a way that transcended human units. It was communication stripped to its purest essence, frequency, rhythm, proportion. Then came the revelation that changed everything. When MIT's team plotted the internal ratios of the pulses on a logarithmic scale, they discovered that each cluster corresponded to known constants in physics. The fine structure constant alpha appeared, the electron-to-proton mass ratio, the ratio of electromagnetic to gravitational forces, These weren't random scientific echoes. They were signposts, proofs of shared understanding. The message was essentially saying, we know the same laws, we are bound by the same universe. But buried in the harmonics of the signal was another layer, something almost poetic. When the frequency modulations were interpreted through biological scales rather than physical ones, they formed numerical correlations with key events in Earth's history. The ratio 7.5 appeared again, this time tied to the evolutionary timeline of life. It was as though the sender wasn't just proving its knowledge of physics, it was referencing our specific world. Whoever constructed this signal understood the chemistry that built our cells, the physics that shapes our stars, and the fragile balance that allows life to exist here. It wasn't just math, it was empathy disguised as numbers. To the decoding teams, that realization hit like a wave. This wasn't an attempt to impress or intimidate. It was communication structured in the only truly universal tongue, the constants that define existence itself. They had found a way to speak across light years and biology through patterns that any civilization capable of curiosity could recognize. Each pulse became a word, each ratio a sentence, each constant a declaration of kinship. And yet, behind this astonishing mathematical clarity, something else began to emerge, a sense of scale, of purpose. The message didn't feel like a beginning. It felt like a continuation, as though Earth was merely the next chapter in an ongoing survey. The 12th entry in a long list of civilizations capable of receiving this signal. As scientists began to suspect that we were not the first to be contacted, the mood shifted from awe to unease. If we are number 12, who were the first 11? And more importantly, what happened to them? For weeks, researchers believed the 3I ATLAS transmission was purely mathematical, a precise, almost sterile stream of information. But that illusion shattered the moment Caltech's team decided to visualize the amplitude variations of the signal. What appeared as mere fluctuations in strength, faint rises and dips of radio intensity, were not random noise at all. When plotted in 3 dimensions, they formed something unmistakable, an image. At first, the picture was crude, almost abstract, a constellation of bright points surrounded by faint ripples of energy. But as the filters improved and the algorithms refined, the pattern resolved into something breathtaking, a 3D star map. It showed a region of space roughly 5,000 light-years wide, our local galactic neighborhood, and right at its center was a familiar point of light. The Sunday, the scientists stared in silence. Around our star, 11 others glowed brighter than the rest, each marked with the same repeating mathematical tag found throughout the signal, the 12th prime. 12 systems, all highlighted, all sharing key traits, G-type stars, similar ages, stable orbits, planets positioned in the delicate zone where liquid water could exist. In other words, 12 worlds capable of life. That's when the realization hit. We weren't being greeted, we were being cataloged. 3I. Atlas wasn't sending out a message to us alone. It was transmitting information about a network of systems, a survey of potential life-bearing planets in this sector of the galaxy. And Earth, the 12th marker on that map, was only one entry in a much larger collection. When scientists compared the map with existing astronomical data, they were stunned to find several matches with known exoplanets, Kepler discoveries, nearby G-type stars, and systems we had already suspected might harbor life. But others didn't match anything currently listed in our databases. These were worlds we had never detected, hidden, perhaps, by angle, distance, or dust. Yet whoever encoded this signal knew them in astonishing detail. Each of the 12 systems was marked with additional mathematical notes, ratios, and sequences that, when decoded, appeared to describe planetary characteristics, atmospheric density, stellar age, orbital stability. It was as though 3I ATLAS was handing us a galactic census. But the deeper scientists analyzed the structure, the more it felt personal. The point representing our sun wasn't just included, it was emphasized, pulsing with a slightly higher amplitude than the others. It was as if the sender was saying, "This is where you are the 12th." That discovery sent shockwaves through every scientific agency on Earth. If 3I Atlas was indeed a probe, and all evidence suggested it was, then it wasn't wandering aimlessly through interstellar space. It was following a route, a deliberate circuit visiting each of the 12 systems in sequence, collecting data, updating its records, and moving on. And now, after billions of years of travel, it had reached us. The implications were staggering. Were we the last on its route, or the next in a line of civilizations being studied, evaluated, perhaps even contacted? The message didn't say. It didn't explain what happened to the others, or whether they had ever replied, but the pattern was too perfect, too methodical to be coincidence. It became clear that the transmission was not a simple hello, it was a report, an announcement that we had been added to a list that might stretch across light years and ages of history. As one researcher quietly put it during a press briefing, "We thought we were the ones searching for life, but maybe we're the ones being found." The room fell silent after that, because the more they studied the map, the more a chilling thought took hold. If Earth was number 12, then 3I, Atlas, has already visited the other 11. And if that's true, then it's not coming to meet us. It's coming back. At first, the data in the 3I, Atlas transmission seemed to speak in the language of stars and atoms, pure physics, clean and distant. But buried within the phase modulation of the signal, researchers uncovered something far more intimate, something that tied the message directly to Earth's own history. When decoded, the signal didn't just describe universal constants, it told a story. Our story. It began with time. The modulation shifts, subtle, almost imperceptible, corresponded to specific intervals measured against the hydrogen frequency, the same universal standard already present throughout the message. When converted into human units, these intervals aligned with recognizable dates, milestones in the evolution of life on Earth. The first encoded moment corresponded to roughly 3.8 billion years ago, the dawn of life itself. The second, 2.4 billion years ago, when photosynthesis began and oxygen flooded the atmosphere. Then came 540 million years ago, the Cambrian explosion, when life suddenly diversified into complex forms. At each point, the signals seemed to mark a threshold in our biological timeline, as though logging observations during specific epochs. The sequence continued with 66 million years ago, the asteroid impact that ended the age of dinosaurs. Then, 300,000 years ago, when Homo sapiens emerged. And finally, 10,000 years ago, coinciding with the rise of human civilization and agriculture. The message contained all of it, each turning point in our planetary history encoded in mathematical rhythm. But then, researchers found one final timestamp. Unlike the others, it wasn't ancient, it was recent, 1945. The same year the first nuclear weapon was detonated on Earth. That was the moment the signal intensified, as if marking a final phase in its long observation when humanity crossed the boundary between primitive life and a civilization capable of self-destruction. The data suggested that whoever sent this message had been monitoring us long before we even looked up at the stars, watching from distances we couldn't imagine, measuring our progress, our failures, our awakening as a species. It became clear 3I Atlas hadn't just arrived now. It had been here before, or others like it had. The object's strange acceleration patterns, its periodic trajectory through the solar system, all pointed to the same unsettling possibility. We weren't witnessing the arrival of something new. We were witnessing its return. Across research centers, the implications divided scientists into two camps. Some saw this as an extraordinary opportunity, evidence that we are part of a cosmic network of observation, a scientific study spanning eons. Others viewed it as deeply concerning proof that Earth has been under surveillance for billions of years by an intelligence whose motives we cannot comprehend. If the encoded dates were truly snapshots of our evolutionary milestones, it means the watchers have been here through every major transition from microbes to mammals, from stone tools to spaceflight. They didn't interfere. They didn't reveal themselves. They simply recorded, observed, waited. But why mark the nuclear age? Why signal us now, after remaining silent for so long? Was 1945 merely the first moment we became visible to them, our radio emissions and atomic detonations announcing our arrival into the galactic conversation? Or was it something else, a warning, a test, a reminder that we have reached a point of no return? The scientists at MIT described the pattern with one haunting metaphor. It's as if someone has been taking notes on Earth's development and just turned the page to the final chapter. If that's true, then 3I, ATLAS, isn't the beginning of a mystery, it's the conclusion of a very long experiment. And the next entry in that cosmic logbook might already be writing itself. For months, scientists believed they had uncovered the full meaning of the 3I Atlas transmission. The mathematical structure, the evolutionary timeline, the galactic map, it all painted a coherent, if unsettling, picture. But late in the decoding process, a final layer emerged, a pattern that didn't fit with any of the others. It wasn't a physical constant, a biological timestamp, or a mathematical ratio. It was something different, something alive with precision. It was time. Buried deep in the signal's phase modulation, a sequence of temporal markers aligned with astronomical coordinates. When converted into three-dimensional space, they pinpointed a single location, a point approximately 1.3 astronomical units from the Sun just beyond Earth's orbit, near the region where no known planet or object currently exists. And alongside those coordinates, encoded with terrifying clarity, was a countdown 18 months from the moment of full signal detection. That's when the mood inside the NASA control room changed. Up until that point, everything could be interpreted theoretically, detached from the present. But this was immediate. It wasn't abstract anymore. It was a schedule. Dr. James Robertson from JPL was the first to run the orbital mechanics. At the appointed time, Earth will pass within 0.4 AU of that exact location, close enough for visual and radio observation. The geometry was almost too perfect, as if whoever sent the signal had calculated our trajectory in advance. It's an invitation, Robertson said quietly during a briefing, or a warning. No one spoke for a long time after that. Once the data was verified by independent observatories in Chile, Germany, and Japan, the global scientific community reached an unavoidable conclusion. The 3I Atlas message wasn't just telling us what it knew. It was telling us where to look and when. But for what? Three main theories began circulating among analysts. The first, the most hopeful, was that this was a rendezvous point, a planned moment of contact between Earth and the intelligence behind the signal. The second, more cautious, suggested it was an observational waypoint, a location where another probe or transmission would become detectable, not necessarily directed at us, but allowing us to witness it if we were ready. The third theory was darker, that the coordinates indicated an event, something destined to happen whether we participate or not, a cosmic phenomenon, or something sent toward our system intentionally. Whatever the truth, the encoded timeline was precise down to the minute. There was no ambiguity. Something significant will occur at that position in space, exactly 18 months after the decoding began. As soon as the coordinates were released internally, NASA, the European Space Agency, and China's National Space Administration began covertly redirecting resources. Optical telescopes, radio arrays, and orbital satellites have already been tasked with monitoring that region of space. Behind the scenes, discussions turned toward building small autonomous probes to be launched ahead of schedule, in hopes of intercepting or observing whatever arrives. Publicly, agencies remain silent. Official statements call the coordinates an ongoing subject of analysis, a phrase that conceals the urgency beneath. But off-record, many scientists admit what few dare to say aloud. If the message is authentic, and all evidence says it is, then in 18 months, something intelligent is expected to appear within reach of Earth. The more they analyzed the structure, the more the countdown appeared intentional, rhythmic, patient, as if the senders knew this was how long it would take us to decode it, to prepare ourselves. Almost like they had done this before. One researcher compared it to a doorbell pressed across light years. The sound has reached us, the coordinates are the doorstep, and now, time is simply the pause between the ring and the door opening. 18 months, that's all we have before something or someone arrives. The countdown has already begun. When the coordinates were confirmed, everything changed. What had begun as an intellectual curiosity, a puzzle of math and mystery, suddenly became a countdown measured in real time. The news spread through scientific channels like an electrical pulse. NASA had verified the signal. ESA had corroborated it. Japan, China, and India all reported the same result. There was no mistake, no glitch in the data. 3i Atlas had given us a date, a place, and a purpose. Within hours, space agencies convened emergency conferences. The first meeting was held behind closed doors at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Every participant described the same mood, a silence heavy enough to feel physical. Some wanted to send a reply immediately, to acknowledge the signal and confirm our understanding. Others warned against it. "We've been observed for billions of years," one scientist said, "but this may be the first time they've allowed us to notice. That means it's deliberate, and we need to understand why before we speak back." Across the Atlantic, the European Space Agency took a different stance. Their analysts argued that the message was not a threat, but an invitation, a structured hand extended across space and time. If they wanted to harm us, one researcher told the press, they wouldn't need to send coordinates. They could remain invisible. But not everyone agreed. Military advisors in multiple countries quietly raised another possibility. The signal might not be an invitation at all, but a test, a way to gauge our behavior. How we respond could determine whether we're seen as intelligent or dangerous. Behind the official caution, a frantic race began. The United States proposed forming a joint task force under the United Nations, a global council to coordinate observation, defense, and potential communication. Russia and China hesitated, citing concerns over data sharing and technology secrecy. If something arrives, one official remarked, "Who controls the first contact controls the future." The political tension was immediate. Intelligence agencies demanded access to raw telemetry, fearing that other nations might use the event for strategic advantage. Astronomers, meanwhile, fought to keep the data open and transparent. The message, they insisted, wasn't for one government, it was for humanity. While the debates unfolded in conference rooms and encrypted calls, something else began happening, something quieter and far more human. Around the world, people looked up. Religious leaders, philosophers, teachers, and children all asked the same question: what happens when we're no longer alone? Telescopes on every continent have been recalibrated toward the target coordinates. The square-kilometer array in South Africa now runs 24-hour observations, recording every fluctuation in the region of space where 3i Atlas indicated the rendezvous would occur. NASA's Deep Space Network has redirected a portion of its communication arrays, ready to detect the faintest whisper from beyond the void. Still, no one can agree on what we should do if or when something answers. Should humanity respond with curiosity, caution, or silence? Should we send a reply or simply observe? Even within NASA, opinions fracture. Some argue that remaining silent might be interpreted as fear or hostility. Others warn that responding without understanding could expose us to consequences we can't control. One senior astrophysicist summarized the dilemma perfectly. "It's like standing in a dark forest, hearing someone call your name, and realizing the voice knows who you are, but you don't know who's calling." For now, official statements remain careful. No confirmation of intent, no promises of response. But beneath that calm surface, preparations are accelerating. Unmanned probes are being designed under new international projects, disguised as standard missions. Surveillance satellites are quietly retasked. The United Nations is drafting emergency protocols not for war, but for first contact. And still, the clock keeps ticking. 17 months, then 16, then 15. Every passing day draws us closer to the moment when something or someone will arrive at those coordinates. And the most unnerving thought of all? They already know we'll be there. When the coordinates were confirmed, everything changed. What had begun as an intellectual curiosity, a puzzle of math and mystery, suddenly became a countdown measured in real time. The news spread through scientific channels like an electrical pulse. NASA had verified the signal. ESA had corroborated it. Japan, China, and India all reported the same result. There was no mistake, no glitch in the data. 3i Atlas had given us a date, a place, and a purpose. Within hours, space agencies convened emergency conferences. The first meeting was held behind closed doors at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Every participant described the same mood, a silence heavy enough to feel physical. Some wanted to send a reply immediately, to acknowledge the signal and confirm our understanding. Others warned against it. "We've been observed for billions of years," one scientist said, "but this may be the first time they've allowed us to notice. That means it's deliberate, and we need to understand why before we speak back." Across the Atlantic, the European Space Agency took a different stance. Their analysts argued that the message was not a threat, but an invitation, a structured hand extended across space and time. If they wanted to harm us, one researcher told the press, they wouldn't need to send coordinates, they could remain invisible. But not everyone agreed. Military advisors in multiple countries quietly raised another possibility. The signal might not be an invitation at all, but a test, a way to gauge our behavior. How we respond could determine whether we're seen as intelligent or dangerous. Behind the official caution, a frantic race began. The United States proposed forming a joint task force under the United Nations, a global council to coordinate observation, defense, and potential communication. Russia and China hesitated, citing concerns over data sharing and technology secrecy. If something arrives, one official remarked, "Who controls the first contact controls the future." The political tension was immediate. Intelligence agencies demanded access to raw telemetry, fearing that other nations might use the event for strategic advantage. Astronomers, meanwhile, fought to keep the data open and transparent. The message, they insisted, wasn't for one government, it was for humanity. While the debates unfolded in conference rooms and encrypted calls, something else began happening, something quieter and far more human. Around the world, people looked up. Religious leaders, philosophers, teachers, and children all asked the same question: what happens when we're no longer alone? Telescopes on every continent have been recalibrated toward the target coordinates. The Square Kilometre Array in South Africa now runs 24-hour observations, recording every fluctuation in the region of space where 3I Atlas indicated the rendezvous would occur. NASA's Deep Space Network has redirected a portion of its communication arrays, ready to detect the faintest whisper from beyond the void. Still, no one can agree on what we should do if or when something answers. Should humanity respond with curiosity, caution, or silence? Should we send a reply or simply observe? Even within NASA, opinions fracture. Some argue that remaining silent might be interpreted as fear or hostility. Others warn that responding without understanding could expose us to consequences we can't control. One senior astrophysicist summarized the dilemma perfectly. It's like standing in a dark forest, hearing someone call your name, and realizing the voice knows who you are, but you don't know who's calling. For now, official statements remain careful. No confirmation of intent, no promises of response. But beneath that calm surface, preparations are accelerating. Unmanned probes are being designed under new international projects, disguised as standard missions. Surveillance satellites are quietly retasked. The United Nations is drafting emergency protocols not for war, but for first contact. And still, the clock keeps ticking. 17 months, then 16, then 15. Every passing day draws us closer to the moment when something or someone will arrive at those coordinates. And the most unnerving thought of all? They already know we'll be there. The official line from NASA and the European Space Agency is cautious. The 3I Atlas signal contains structured data of unknown origin. But behind closed doors, those who've studied it know that phrase barely scratches the surface. The message is more than a string of frequencies, it's a philosophy encoded in mathematics. And what it implies is as haunting as it is profound. For decades, humans have asked one question: are we alone? The 3I Atlas transmission doesn't just answer that, it flips the question entirely. Because it suggests we were never alone, not for a single moment. It suggests that somewhere out there, intelligence has been watching, waiting, and learning not from afar, but up close, with precision that transcends imagination. The signal doesn't read like a greeting, it reads like a report. Every element of its structure implies observation. The evolutionary timestamps, the references to physics, chemistry, and biology specific to Earth, the map marking 12 systems with life-bearing worlds. This isn't a random attempt at contact, it's an audit of civilizations, a record of who reached the threshold of intelligence, who survived it, and who didn't. The most unsettling part is the tone implied by its precision. There's no urgency, no warning, no emotion, only perfect order, calm and deliberate. That silence speaks volumes. It doesn't threaten, it doesn't comfort, it simply acknowledges. As if to say, you've been seen, you're now part of the record. Dr. Elena Vasquez of MIT put it this way in a closed symposium. If the message is genuine, and I believe it is, then we're not talking about a single civilization reaching out across space. We're talking about a system, a network, a long-term process of observation that began long before we existed. The mathematical consistency across the transmission supports her theory. The use of prime numbers, hydrogen frequencies, and universal constants suggests an underlying design, one meant to outlast the senders themselves. In other words, 3I, Atlas, may not be a visitor, but a messenger, dispatched eons ago by a civilization that could already be extinct, still carrying out its mission with mechanical precision. But there's another interpretation, one that divides the scientific community. Some believe 3I, Atlas, isn't just a data-gathering probe, but an active instrument of assessment. A test, a way of determining whether humanity is ready for direct interaction. The final coordinates, the countdown, and the deliberate timing all point to intention. Something or someone wants us to be aware. Yet, even that awareness feels orchestrated. The transmission reached us at a precise moment, the only period in human history when we had both the technology to decode it and the global communication networks to share it instantly. Too perfect to be coincidence. It's as if they waited for us to reach a threshold, the point when we could recognize the message but not yet fully understand it. The perfect moment to test our response. Will we cooperate or divide? Approach with wonder or fear? Broadcast our existence to the stars or retreat into silence? Perhaps that's the real experiment. Because in every layer of the decoded message, there's an unspoken mirror, one that reflects more about us than about them. How we analyze it, how we argue, how we prepare. The signal may be less about communication and more about observation, not of our planet, but of our behavior. If that's true, then the 18-month countdown isn't their test, it's ours. We are being measured not by our intelligence, but by our maturity, by how we handle discovery, fear, and the unknown, and perhaps by whether we deserve to be part of something greater than ourselves. The decoded data may hold cosmic truths, but the message between the lines is painfully human. We see you. Now show us who you are. The decoding is complete. The coordinates are verified. The countdown has already begun. And now, for the first time in recorded history, humanity knows when something will happen, but not what. The world's most powerful telescopes are now aimed at a single point in space, 1.3 astronomical units from the Sun, just beyond Earth's orbit. Somewhere in that vast emptiness, something is waiting or on its way. Across observatories and command centers, the atmosphere is tense, almost reverent. Screens glow with live telemetry. Data scrolls endlessly across monitors, watched by people who understand that every flicker might mean history unfolding in real time. The phrase whispered in labs and corridors from Pasadena to Geneva is the same: 18 months. It has become more than a timeline, it's a mantra, a heartbeat, the measure of our species' patience and fear. Governments are now acting in secret. Space agencies are designing new missions under harmless names: Deep Observation Initiative, Project Horizon, Spectral Survey 47. But their objectives are anything but routine. Small, autonomous probes are being engineered to launch within months, aimed at intercepting the rendezvous coordinates. The public will hear about solar radiation studies. In reality, those crafts will be humanity's first attempt to meet whatever waits out there. The United Nations has formed a classified committee called the Contact Contingency Council, composed of scientists, diplomats, and military strategists. Their task: prepare for scenarios ranging from benign communication to existential threat. Psychological experts are studying how global populations might react if proof of non-human intelligence is confirmed. The Vatican has quietly convened theologians. Meanwhile, defense agencies are calculating risks, not of invasion, but of panic. Even as secrecy grows, the truth leaks in fragments. Amateur astronomers share odd readings, patterns they can't explain. Conspiracy forums pulse with theories, some grounded, others apocalyptic. Yet beneath all the noise, one emotion dominates: anticipation. Humanity is collectively holding its breath. Every day, the countdown shortens. 17 months, 16, 15. The tension is no longer limited to scientific circles. It's cultural, psychological, spiritual. Artists, philosophers, and ordinary people begin asking deeper questions. What if the 3I Atlas message isn't about them at all, but about us? What if contact was never meant to start with a handshake, but with a mirror? NASA has confirmed unofficially that at least 3 major space observatories have detected subtle anomalies near the specified coordinates. Faint electromagnetic fluctuations, rhythmic but inconsistent. They could be artifacts. Or they could be the first signs of approach. None of the agencies are commenting publicly, but off the record, one engineer described it in a single word: anticipation, as if the universe itself is waiting. Still, not everyone agrees on what to do next. Some push for open communication, insisting we send a mathematical reply, acknowledging the signal and its meaning. Others argue that silence is safer, that broadcasting our awareness could trigger consequences we can't foresee. In a sense, the debate reflects our dual nature: curiosity and fear, wonder and caution, both fighting for control. Meanwhile, scientists continue to analyze the original transmission, searching for hidden layers or encoded instructions. They suspect that 3I Atlas's message might not be static, that as time passes, its meaning could evolve, revealing new data tied to celestial alignments or human actions. The signal might be alive in ways we don't yet understand. What happens next isn't just about discovery, it's about character. The moment we choose how to respond will define who we are in the eyes of whatever intelligence is watching. The decision will echo beyond politics, beyond science, beyond faith. 18 months. That's the time humanity has been given, not just to prepare telescopes and spacecraft, but to decide what kind of civilization we want to be when the sky finally answers back. Because something is coming. The only question left is whether we'll face it as one world or 12 divided ones. The universe has always spoken in light, in gravity, in silence. But for the first time, humanity has heard something different, a voice that is not our own. The 3I Atlas signal has changed everything, not just for science, but for what it means to be human. It has forced us to confront the possibility that we are part of a story far older and larger than we ever imagined. Every generation looks up at the stars and wonders if someone is looking back. Now, we know they are. They always have been. And in decoding their message, we've done more than translate alien mathematics. We've seen our reflection in the cosmos. The signal wasn't angry or benevolent. It wasn't even emotional. It was something far more powerful, curious. It watched us evolve from cells to civilizations, from fire to fission. It documented our rise, our mistakes, our potential. And when it finally spoke, it didn't offer promises or threats. It offered a question disguised as coordinates, a meaning written in the language of physics. Are you ready? That's the real meaning behind the 3I Atlas transmission. It isn't a command, it's an invitation, a moment of choice. Humanity has 18 months to decide what kind of species we are before the cosmos answers back. Will we unite in curiosity and courage, or fragment into fear and secrecy? Will we look to the stars with open hands or clenched fists? The message doesn't tell us what will happen next, because that part isn't written by them, it's written by us. Across the world, telescopes hum, satellites whisper, and computers record the faint echoes of something vast and unseen. Scientists continue to refine their models, philosophers debate the ethics of contact, and somewhere, perhaps, a child looks up at the night sky, unaware that the point of light above them marks the spot where humanity's story may soon change forever. If the decoded data is correct, something will appear there, something built by a mind that understands the same physics we do, but mastered them long before we could walk upright. It may be another probe. It may be something far more complex, but whatever it is, it will arrive knowing who we are, how we think, and how we've chosen to respond. And that's what makes this moment so extraordinary, not the discovery itself, but the awareness that the next step isn't theirs, it's ours. Perhaps, somewhere across the dark, another species once reached this same threshold. Perhaps they faced the same countdown, the same choice. Maybe this is how civilizations are measured, not by their technology or power, but by the grace with which they answer when the universe finally knocks. For now, the stars remain silent, but that silence feels alive like the breath before a word. Every clock on Earth is ticking toward the same instant in time, the same coordinates, the same unknown. We've spent centuries asking for a sign. Now we have one. The only question left is, what will humanity say back?